And we're back. For this video, we're going to go ahead and start digging into our 802.1x configuration. I'm going to do a little bit of a review of the the anatomy of an ICE policy set, just so we can kind of understand a little bit better what I'm doing. So with policy sets, one of the things I kind of went over in the first couple of videos is the fact that we're going and meeting the top level condition first, this guy, before it even starts looking at the authentication or the authorization policies. Now, the authentication policy, just trying to keep things clear here, it doesn't say give you access, it just verifies who you are, or the endpoint, what the endpoint is. It's not concerned with what level of access. That's all in the authorization policy, which is auth-z. So the way that these are written out, just to kind of give a little bit of clarity, is if this condition is met, and this condition can be wired 802.1x, wired map, a bunch of different things that you can choose here, and you also can put plus, the result would be the allowed protocols. So this could be such as ETLS, PEEP, host lookup. If both of these are met, then what it does is it looks in an identity store. So this could be, internal users, AD, etc. Sorry about my messy writing. It's kind of a little harder to do on here, but you get the point. So first, it's got to meet these conditions to check the identity store. If the user's found or the endpoint's found in the identity store, then we move to step 2, or to the auth-z policy. And then this is pretty straightforward as well. If conditions are met, result. And that result, as we kind of went through in the profiling video, is an authorization policy or authorization profile. And these conditions that are under the auth-z policy could be, if they're doing 802.1x and they're a member of X AD group, or it could just be, profile type. It could be a number of things, but this is essentially, down here is where you create your roles-based access or your device-specific access, and it kind of lets you control what level of access. When you're doing profiling, it's really important to be able to, you're only granting access to what that specific type of endpoint needs. Now, I know I was a little bit liberal in my last video where I was just granting access to wired access permit all to almost everything, but the reality is we're going to get into more of the roles-based access here, and we're really limiting some of the access that the policy has or the endpoint has based on not only what kind of endpoint, but who's logged into that endpoint. So bear with me for a moment. I'm just going to go ahead and put my PC to the side and start going through the policy with you. So in our first couple of videos, we created a computer and user certificate, which we assigned to the group policy. And so these are automatically issued without any interference from the end user or any manual intervention. It's pretty seamless when you have this being done. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and start creating some of those things that we're going to be basing this access on. So some of the core components and conditions. So first thing I'm going to do is in a previous video we created the the certificate authentication or authorization or certificate authentication profiles. I actually deleted them because I'm going to start from scratch on this one. So this is going to be looking at cert. We're going to be looking at AD. Yeah, it makes me search. The identity store is going to be our Active Directory. I'm going to look for subject or alternative name attributes in the certificate for Active Directory only. I'm going to go ahead and perform binary comparison as well. So this is going to be the identity store aspect of my policy set. So I'll show you where that fits in here. So this is the allowed protocols, this is the condition, and this is the identity store. So let's go ahead and the authentication policy first. And if I, before I create that authentication policy, I'm going to show you what it looks like if it fails. Just to give you an example of what it'll look like. So right now the default rule is to deny access if it's not found. So let's go ahead and turn on a port with a corporate machine connected. Ignore this. I was playing with some different policy sets before, and I've since deleted them. But so I'm going to enable this. I'm going to try to log into this PC right here. And you'll see it hit default. Give it a moment. Well, it would help if I unshut the port. There we go. There we go. So the authentication policy right now, it hits default because we don't have a rule in place for this. So I'm going to go ahead and shut this port down again, and I'm going to log this user off. And here's where we're going to start building out that first building block, that authentication policy. So back down here to under policy sets, security demo wired. That's my policy set that we're working with today. I'm going to insert a rule above, and this is going to be Dot1x. Now the condition I want it to meet, the first condition is going to be, we're going to use a condition that's already pre-baked into ICE. So select existing condition from library, compound condition, and we're going to do wired 802.1x. And the protocols that we're going to allow for this, I'm going to create my own allowed protocol list and call it EAP-TLS. EAP-TLS. And I'm going to uncheck all of this stuff. I'm going to leave EAP-TLS enabled, mostly because this is going to be useful later when we start to get in BYOD policies. So I'm going to turn off everything else. Under PEEP, EAP-TLS is allowed as well. And I'm going to create another little sub row up here, which is going to be looking for Active Directory cert. So if this policy set's met, it's going to look for this as well. So AD certificate. The condition that I'm going to match on here is going to be network access, authentication method equals X509 PKI. And I'm going to match that against AD cert, which we just created. That's the certificate authentication profile. I'm also going to have AD in here as well. Continue. And I'll have it continue on to deny access if all else fails. So now when I bring this guy back up, and look, it'll still fail because we don't have an authorization policy yet, but you'll see that it now matches an authentication profile. So give me just a moment while I go ahead and log back into this host. Alt delete. There we go, but it still fails under authorization. So let's go ahead and fix that. So let's go. Now we're going to start building our blocks for the authorization policy, and this is really where the cool stuff about ICE comes in. You get to really dig in and grant the person access based not only on what kind of endpoint, because if they're meeting our authentication profile, we know who it is and we know what kind of endpoint, which is a corporate endpoint. So now we want to make sure that whoever signed into that PC, they get access based on their certain role. So I'm going to first create my conditions, which in this case, I'm going to keep it pretty simple. I'm going to say they're using PEEP TLS and their AD group is X. First thing, instead of having to do PEEP TLS about 15 different times or 6 different times, I'm just going to go ahead and create a condition, the condition. And the condition you can put these individually into every rule if you want. This just saves me time. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to policy elements, condition. This is a way to kind of group together condition elements that you will reuse multiple times. And so you don't have to sit there and keep putting them in as individual conditions. So I'm going to call this PEEP TLS. And I see these attributes that I can add. I can do these individually inside of the policy if I wanted to. I just like making kind of a preset condition because I know I'm going to reuse this in my wired policy and my wireless policy. So instead of having to do two extra clicks every time I do it, I can just select this pre-made condition I create right now. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do eep tunnel equals PEEP. And then the inner authentication method is EAP. So EAP authentication equals EAP TLS. So there. The next thing I'm going to do is start working on my conditions or my results, like what level of access they should have. So you go to policy elements, results, go to authorization, and let's go ahead and start creating some interesting ACLs, and this is just to kind of show us how much access everybody has to what. This is going to be our down a little bit ACL we'll use, and we're going to be a little creative here because I want to kind of show the difference between different roles and the way that ICE can kind of change up access. So let me take a little notes while I'm doing this here because I'm going to do this on the fly. So the first thing we're going to do, we have 4 AD groups. We've got domain admin, which I'm going to give access to everything, demo, vendor, and employee. So for the demo one, let's go ahead and say, actually, I'm going to steal something over here real quick. Okay, so never mind. So for the demo user, we're going to go ahead and deny IP any host. This is just a host, not on my LAN, but it's somewhere out there. We're just going to deny access to it and permit IP any. Okay, syntax is good. Next thing we're going to do is for my employee. So my employee will, let's go ahead and say my employee should not have access to manage ICE. So let's go ahead and block them from accessing ICE. Then deny IP any host. They shouldn't have access to my firepower management console, but everything else is fine. So IP any. next thing we're going to do is we're going to create one for the vendor. So hold on a sec. Back to downloadable ACLs. Just going to grab this really quickly. You'll see what I'm going to do. So let's say my vendor is only in there to work on my ICE and my firepower management console, and we're going to give them access only to those things. So vendor access is going to be, they can have access to permit IP any host firepower management console and permit IP any host ICE. Everything else, no soup for you. Perfect. And last one I want to do is for, actually it's going to be for my computer when it's not, there's no host logged into it. And the reason I like to create this one is because you don't necessarily want every host that's a corporate owned PC being blocked from everything internally all night long when no one's logged in. Because think about it, you'll want to have kind of staggered updates, group policy updates. You don't want to, you do most AD admins and desktop support does some sort of desktop updates during the night, and you don't want it all slamming on your LAN when you come in first thing in the morning. So this is kind of something I like to grant, make sure that you have at least some level of access to do, background operations. So I'm going to do one for, AD only. So hold on a second. Just going to grab, I'm lazy. I don't want to rewrite this over and over again. So apologies. It's fine. So let's go ahead and add AD only. We're going to permit access to permit IP any host 1.1.140, deny IP any. So it can get an IP address, it can do DNS, and it can access our Active Directory server. So those are the DACLs I'm going to use to build my authorization profiles right now. And then we'll test these policies out after we create them. So the first one is going to be demo access. And the only thing we're going to match on this is going to be our DACL of demo. Submit. Computer only, or computer access. AD only. Now we're going to do our employee access. Then our vendor access. The last one I'm going to do is for domain admin. Oh, it's just going to be a straight permit all traffic. Now we're going to tie these together into our policy set. So let's go over to policy sets. Go back down to security demo wired. and let's make the fun stuff happen. So just go ahead and put this above here, and we'll go ahead and start with domain admins. The conditions we're gonna check on are pretty easy. It's going to be the condition that we created before, which I just showed you, ETLS, and the other attribute is going to be, we're going to check AD and the external identity group of domain admin. And based on those two conditions being met, we will give them domain admin access. Save. So pretty easy stuff right there. So now we're going to just duplicate the rule over and over again and just do the same for, demo. Just change. The only thing we're going to change here is the group, which we're going to demo, and the authorization result, the permissions that basically are allowed. Demo access, done. We'll duplicate below. Employee. Let's change up that Active Directory group. Done. Vendor. Vendor access. Done. And last but not least, the computer access. Ooh, I fat fingered that one pretty well. Vendor. Computer only. We're going to match that to domain computers. Since it's at the bottom of the list, it pretty much will wait until if it doesn't hit any of these more specific policies, it hits that one. Computer access. Done. Let's save this. And let me go ahead and unshut that port to have that start authorizing. Here we go. And this is what it looks like over here. So this is, I have console level access, but I basically got to see that that everything is working according to plan. So next thing we're gonna do. So I'm signed on as demo user. Let me sign out and see if the AD profile kicks in. AD only, right there. It was pretty quick, as you can see. Now I'm going to sign in with a different user. Let's go ahead and switch user to Tony Stark. Pretty fast. And then we're going to go ahead and sign out, and we'll be Jessica Jones next. Actually, you know what? While we're at Tony Stark, let's go ahead and test that roles-based access. CMD. Oh, this computer's going a little slow. Okay, there we go. We're going to ping 10.1.100.10. That should work. Now let's try to ping something else. Nope. I only have access to those two IPs. Now let's try Jessica Jones. You can kind of see it starting to show over here. Force log off. Guess I don't care about that. Now Jessica Jones should have access to everything except for my, except for, and yeah, it's beautiful. Right away, employee access, and let's go ahead and sign in to see if she has access to pinging 10.1.100.45. That's just fine. Let's see if she can ping ICE. No. So as you can see, even though this is a corporate-owned machine, it really depends on who's, ICE can basically detect who's on using that certificate authentication and determine based on that in their AD group, okay, we're going to give them access based on that, who it is and what it is. ICE can get a lot deeper than this. With ICE 2.2, you've got, you can look at vulnerabilities. You can do, you can do posturing. You've been able to do posturing for a long time. There's a lot of different ways we can do this, but on a very basic level, this is kind of, you can create policies saying these guys can have access to this, and only with corporate machines versus their own PC they bring in. And you can control that access, and you can get very granular with it. So I'm gonna go ahead and yeah, I love all greens. You can see that's beautiful. So I'm gonna sign off and just watch AD access take over again. Log off. The next video, I'm probably going to just do a little bit of an experiment showing passive ID. Passive ID was actually in, technically speaking, it was in ICE 2.1, but it's kind of, it's on steroids now. There's a lot of other options you can do. So I'll hit that up in the next video. But thank you guys so much for listening, and I hope that you guys learned a lot from this.